You're listening to Veeam Partner Perspectives with Eric Doherty. Welcome to the Veeam Partner Perspectives podcast. I'm Eric Doherty. Joining me today is Dustin Albertson, Veeam's Manager of Cloud and Application Alliances. Dustin, thanks for coming on today. You share a little bit about yourself and your role at Veeam?
Yeah, thanks, Eric. So, as you mentioned, name's Dustin Albertson. I've been with Veeam for almost 7 years, or a little over 7 years. I came to Veeam as a cloud solutions architect on the VCSP side, and have moved up and over into different roles. But now, as you mentioned, I'm the manager of cloud and applications for product management alliances at Veeam. And what that means is I run a team of SAs who cover all of our cloud and application alliances. That includes VMware, Microsoft, AWS, Azure, Huawei, Tencent, Alibaba, Google, a lot of these.
All of them.
All the cloud alliances. And then you get into, VMware and SAP, Oracle, things like that as well. So, it's kind of a wide group of technologies there, but kind of all related to cloud and cloud type enterprise applications and things like that.
It seems like it's a role that could ever expand. I mean, just what you listed. I mean, a lot of those companies, some of them didn't even exist several years ago, and some of them had no interest in being cloud related at that point. So it's really changed up.
Yeah, it's very true. I mean, we get into like more cloud native type alliances that we cover, Kubernetes and things like that. And like you say, as little back as 3-4 years ago, like that wasn't even a twinkle, right?
And
now it's everybody's talking about.
Yeah. I mean, I started like a little over 3 years ago, and, in VBR and VAS, we didn't even have anything that was public cloud related. It was, it was through the Enterprise Cloud Connect or VCSP, the Cloud Connect components. Obviously, then we got started 9.5 update 4, and it's just been growing exponentially. And how have you seen that evolution from our traditional availability suite from an on-prem to getting more into being a cloud integrated platform?
It's been exciting for me, at least. I came to Veeam from I'll say a small cloud provider in the Southeast, and I was kind of interested in cloud technologies, obviously. So when I came to Veeam, as I mentioned, it was on the VCSP side, which is still going strong for us, and it's still a very valuable ecosystem. But on the opposite side, the just cloud native, right? We have a lot of customers that have asked us for a while to, integrate in with AWS and integrate in with Azure and be able to send backups to object storage vendors and things like that. So those technologies have been implemented into VBR and as well as cloud native products of their own, right? Like our Veeam backup for AWS and things like that. So these products have emerged in a short period of time, right? Like if you look at it, you think of developing software, it's a pretty cumbersome thing. VBR is our lifeblood, right? And everything plugs into it. So to be able to have all these features be put into the product in such a short period of time, as well as like a whole new ecosystem, is kind of mind blowing.
Excuse me. Yeah. And it's been amazing to watch the growth of what we can do within VBR. And again, like you said, these new products that just didn't even exist a few years ago. I was at I was at reInvent when we debuted backup for AWS, and that product has just exploded since then. I mean, what it could do that day versus what it can do now is absolutely amazing. How do you see the growth of those products, like how historically, and what do you see coming when we look at our cloud native products? Because they're really, I think they're still in their infancy, because we're talking about, it's really been just a little over 2 years. They've been in development a little longer than 2 years, obviously, but they've been on the market for just a little over 2 years. And we've got, rapid deployment of versions there.
Correct. Yeah. With these products, we have a much more efficient development cycle, right? Because when we first released them, they were separate from VBR. so we could develop at a much faster pace. We have dedicated groups within R&D. We have dedicated groups within QA that um, allows us to have these much faster timelines, primarily because that's what cloud native customers are demanding, right? Like we need to be able to add these features more efficiently, add capabilities more efficiently. Whereas with our VBR product, we tend to have a one major update a year release cycle, and then somewhere along the half year we have an update, right? Like there'll be some new features in it, but it's primarily updates to support new VMware cycles, new server additions, things like that. But with that said, our strategy for these products has been, let's first get the least viable product out there, right? Like you said, the first thing we were focusing on is that let's be able to back up an instance or an Azure VM or something like that within the cloud, and that's it. And when everybody kind of looks at it, you're like, well, that's not really that interesting, right? Like this kind of
Yeah.
lackluster.
Yeah.
But the reason why we do that is let's get it out there, find out what people want, and then develop that. Because in our heads, and I've seen this kind of behind the curtains now, is in our heads we'll have an idea of what people want.
Yeah.
RDS and EFS and
Yeah.
FSX and things like that, right? Like we have an idea. But what we have find is that once we get the product out there and we start getting feedback from customers, we may have thought that RDS is up there higher than any of the other ones, but no, most of our customers have said, no, we want EFS, right? We want to be able to protect that first. So what we do is we take that feedback and then, change the direction of the product by doing that. So it allows us to, we're listening to the customers, listening to what people want, developing that feature, and then, moving on to other features. But long story short, what we try to do is the first edition of a product is again very focused, narrowly focused to get it out there, start getting feedback, and then the second edition is we add a little bit more features, but it also is when we start to plug it in with VBR,
Mm-hmm.
and then V3 and beyond are where we add more and more capabilities depending on, again, customer feedback. So
Yeah.
that's kind of the strategy that we have with those cloud native products.
I think you bring up a really good point that I don't think that people appreciate enough is that from partner community and the customer community, just how much the feedback of what they'd like to see in the product impacts what's being developed into the products. And that goes across the board.
Yeah.
So I will always reiterate to people, if you want to see something, get it out there, put it in the forums, talk to your Veeam teams, get the information out there so that the development teams can start seeing it, because it does matter. If enough people are asking for it, that becomes a priority. We don't set what the marketplace wants to do.
Exactly. And that's, we've both been in the field, right? I came
Yeah.
up through the field as well. And one of the most frustrating things for me being in the field was like, I always felt like we were 6 months away from where we needed to be, right?
Yeah.
But the good thing about that is that means that we're always adding new features and new capabilities. It's just, we always felt like, oh man, we need to be there, today, but we're not.
Yeah.
But it goes to, we really, really do listen to customers in the forums and our communities, like the Vanguards and the, what's the name of our new
Oh,
community?
the legends.
Legends. Yeah.
Yeah.
We really do listen to that feedback, and we have these internal meetings every week for these cloud native products, and we discuss feedback that we found, from the forums and things like that. So it really is something that we do as opposed to just trying to get rid of a customer or somebody's just saying they want a feature, right? Like we actually listen to that.
Yeah. It's not a black hole. People put that
Yeah,
stuff out there.
yeah,
It's worthwhile. Because it's the only way that you can really set the path for it. Because if we develop what we want and it's not what people need, it's going to be a short life for a product.
exactly.
So, from a partner perspective, we look a lot at, who should people be talking to when these partners are going into customers? And when you're talking cloud native, especially, a lot of times you're talking about different groups than you may have been talking about when you were doing, your traditional data center. The problem is that we need to get people to pivot who they're talking to. Who should they be trying to talk to get these? Because the opportunities are out there, but I'm not sure that people know who they should be talking to at their customers in order to get traction going with these cloud native solutions.
So what I've found is that it's kind of like the Wild West. It's um, you have a bunch of different groups within a company that all have access to the cloud, right? You have your DevOps teams who are developing in the cloud and they have their own environments and want to manage it and do that. You have your traditional kind of backup or system admin type folks who are maybe learning that they have to do some of this protection as well because other people aren't doing it, or they, again, it's like, the cloud's this magical place, right? They're able to different groups or divisions within a company are able to kind of go spin up their machines and do things as they want. I'm finding that very few companies actually have like a robust kind of strategy around the management of cloud workloads, right?
Hmm.
There's a handful that I've interacted with that actually have like some sort of strategy where they manage it and kind of put guardrails on the users' accounts and things that they can manage. And even if they do create a machine, it has to be tagged appropriately, and then
Yeah.
that leads
Things
into
they did when they were on prem, but now they've just
correct.
decided, like
Yeah,
you said, Wild West. They're not even, they should be doing it, but for some reason it's, it's
yeah,
like, it's not really mine because it's not in my data center. So I don't have to worry. But
exactly.
somebody's getting that bill.
The
Yeah.
most important thing I tell people, this is even internally, right? When we're on sales calls and things like that, is just ask questions, right? Like ask questions about, hey, do you have any cloud workloads, or what is your cloud strategy, and things like that? Because a lot of people tend to forget about it, or focus on, oh, we've got this opportunity with selling them hardware or doing something on prem, right?
Hmm.
And then tend to forget that, oh, maybe they have a $2 million or $5 million
Yeah.
workloads running in AWS because we're just focused on this opportunity. But
Yeah.
it's ask a lot of those questions because there's a lot of times, for partners and providers, it's you're leaving money on the table, or you're leaving data. More importantly for me is customer data out there that you could protect or provide some sort of service around, and protect that data that needs to be protected.
That's very true. And I think you're absolutely right. And the traditional data center folks and DevOps not quite together yet on those conversations.
Yeah,
So, be prepared to talk to different people is kind of what I've told people as
yeah,
well. And don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to bring it up. What's the worst could happen? They don't have anything, or the best that could happen is, like you said, you find out they've got a $5 million footprint out in AWS or something like that.
yeah. And
um,
especially like the key point there again was like the DevOps folks. A lot of these companies and even small footprint companies have some sort of DevOps, or they're doing some sort of things with containers, or even if they're just kind of exploring, right? Like there's something out there, and depending on who you talk to, if you talk to a hardcore DevOps person, they probably say, "Oh, we don't need to protect this, or we don't need to protect this," blah blah blah. But realistically, there's some sort of data out there, no matter what's running on. You may not need to protect the containers themselves, but there's some sort of data, and you need to protect that data. And it's
that's
just
the
kind of
truth. Especially we're seeing that as things like Kubernetes are evolving. That while they were built to be, stateless and, volatile environments, um, people are using them otherwise now,
yeah,
or they're connecting to other data services that you need to protect those data services, or both.
yeah,
So people need to think that through. Real don't take the first time that somebody says we don't need to protect that
yeah,
as the answer. Ask them why they don't need to protect it. Ask
exactly,
why a few times. See if you can get to the root,
yeah.
because they may run out of answers, and then you have a way to talk to them.
Yeah, true. And it's, a lot of people kind of get scared to ask these questions. And I tend to approach it as like, I'm curious, right? I'm a tech guy. I want to just show me your architecture, or, why is this data not important? What happens if this data disappears, right? Is it okay? Or, stuff like that. You just kind of ask those leading questions. And because I am curious, why does it not need to be protected? Right.
Yeah, even if it's a dev environment, what's the impact to your productivity in the dev team if it disappears for a day,
Yeah.
couple days, can't be brought back at all? There's value to that too. It doesn't have to be production data. dev environments, people have deadlines and cost money to develop software.
Yeah.
So protect that stuff. So in our products, we talk a lot about workload mobility, and prem to cloud, cloud to prem, cloud to cloud. Do you see customers taking advantage of those features, or is it more like they like the sound of it because it's an insurance policy to know that they could move them? Are you hearing about people that are actually using that to move them between platforms?
I do. So I wouldn't say it's like something that everybody uses, right? But everybody loves the sound of it, and I see it used in different and unique ways. Like one that pops to mind that I worked on recently is a customer there that wanted we'll call it a poor man's DR, right? Like so. They were leveraging our VBR to back up into S3 in AWS, and they wanted an option of saying, hey, if everything goes down on prem, can we restore this stuff into not only AWS, but can we restore it into VMC?
Mm.
And for, I always use acronyms, but VMC is VMware Cloud on AWS, right? So they were saying, can we work together and script this out? So I said, yeah, this is a unique approach. Let's try it. So we spent a few weeks and scripted everything out and have it to where if there is a disaster, they just deploy a Veeam server, kick off the script, and what the script does is it connects that Veeam server to their S3 bucket. It fires off a command to start a VMC deployment, and then while it's doing that, it has a list of all the VMs and everything, and then does a two different types of restores. It does one restore that does the restore to EC2. So machines that they want running inside of EC2 is kind of firing off those restores. And then once the VMC deployment finishes, that script connects it into the VBR server, and then restores those into starts the restoration process into VMC. Um, it works. It's functional for them. It may not be for everybody, but it was kind of interesting to see that, this is capabilities that we could do using our, PowerShell and APIs and things like that.
Yeah.
That is a unique approach at finding a solution to a problem. Right?
Yeah, you just brought up something that I think a lot of people forget about too, is just how robust that PowerShell environment is, that scripting environment that we have. You combine that with the capabilities that for scripting that these public clouds have,
Yeah.
and you've got a pretty powerful tool there. So, because I get asked often about, can we do, basically an automated DR from, VMware into EC2 directly, or replication or something like that. But those scripts are a great option too. And as a partner, coming up with that stuff, designing that stuff, you can make some good money designing that
Yeah.
and taking that same concept from customer to customer.
You can, and I've seen a lot of I won't say a lot. I've seen some unique like VCSPs or partners do that kind of stuff, right? Like they put this wrapper, using PowerShell or PHP or whatever they want to use around our APIs, and then present it as their own, right? And that's unique, and it's a selling feature of not only our product but what they can do. And
Yeah.
we don't have to necessarily start from scratch because we have a Veeam hub, right? So
Hmm.
we have a GitHub repo that's called Veeam Hub, and there's all sorts of scripts and things that
There's a
essays like
lot out
myself
there.
and others have written and host in there. So there's a plethora of things that are already out there that maybe people don't know about.
You're absolutely right. I would say again, that's Veeam Hub on GitHub. There's a ton of information out there, and a ton of scripts. So if you're thinking of trying something like this, don't start with a blank page.
Yeah.
Look there first,
Yeah.
or at least you get some ideas. Maybe you'll get inspired if you're thinking about doing something like this. And there's new stuff out there all the time too. So
Yeah. And I've got a open head count actually we're interviewing for that is going to be somebody on my team that focuses on this kind of stuff. So
oh,
scripting, automation, orchestration, enterprise apps, things like that. So we'll be adding even more capabilities to that, that Veeam Hub repo, and kind of making it this person be kind of an evangelist, right, as well, doing some blog posts and things like that.
that's
So
great.
we're looking to add more is the moral of the story there.
Good, and I think that's again how we talk about things shifting from the traditional data center to more of the the DevOps world. That's a critical component right there because everything is when you're talking software defined, that means you got to code something, and why shouldn't you be coding your backups as well?
Yep.
That's really a good point. I get asked a lot from partners how we stack up against the native tools in public clouds, the Azure backups of the world, things like that. Um, why shouldn't partners are being asked why shouldn't their customers just use those? They're already there. If they're protecting it already with like an Azure backup, what are the benefits to saying no? You should be using a product like Veeam Backup for Azure.
So a couple of things there is one, this question answers another problem where people say, I don't need to protect data in the cloud, right? It's either it's HA or it's it's multi-region or whatever. I don't need to protect it. Well,
All the things that make our spine shiver.
yeah. So it's like, yeah, you do need to protect it. Not only do you need to protect it, but not only these clouds are coming out with their own products for you to protect the data, but typically what I see is these cloud native products are typically their main focus is to drive more consumption, right? And it's not necessarily about protecting the data as much as it is moving that data from one place to another place to drive consumption. But with that said, there are some decent products and they do some decent features and have some capabilities. But what I find is that most people have multiple environments, right? And where Veeam comes into play is that we can protect not only one of your environments, but 10 of your environments. And you have one product that looks the same and has the same methodology, the same functionality across all these products so that you're not having to learn or train your people on 10 different products. So that's kind of one of the key features there is the management aspect of it. But then we get into some of the pricing things where we can do uh, tricks with the data to say we can take this snapshot of an instance in AWS or Azure or wherever and convert that data into a Veeam format stored in the object storage and keep it there more long term. Have immutability type features of it and things like that. So there's a lot of more like capabilities that we have when it comes to keeping that data longer, as well as being able to have multiple tiers of where you're storing that data in the cloud. That really plays into your cost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and it's funny because I mean, we were talking about the moving from cloud to cloud and using a different backup product, than the native ones that are in there. First off, their goal is the way I've always seen it is they want you in there. Somebody once described public cloud to me as quicksand.
Yeah.
I thought it was better than the old Hotel California that people always say, but it was quicksand, easy to step in, hard to get out.
Yeah.
And I thought that was appropriate. And then thinking about December when there the US East 2 outages
Mhm.
for AWS, I was thinking that'd be interesting. I wonder if anybody was set up to be able to do a restore of their on the fly as quick as possible, not knowing how long that was to suddenly bring themselves up in Azure or GCP,
Mhm.
or restore it into possibly because of how they stored their data, restore their environments into um, another region altogether,
Yep.
including their VPCs, because you can back those up. There's some cool things that went through my head of what people could do if they were using these tools properly.
Yeah. Exactly. And there, we see a lot of people doing that as well. It's doing snapshot replication and keeping it in another region, just ready to, like you say, ready to be fired up and in the event of something like that. And um, I guess you can get into a larger architecture discussion of don't put everything in US East, like everybody does,
I'm sure there are a lot of people that are diversifying right now.
but that's hindsight, right? Like hindsight's
Exactly.
2020. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's no, but those capabilities are what people are looking for, and kind of what is a differentiator, right? Like a lot of the native products just do they don't really focus on that on being able to do a cross region, cross account, things like that,
Yeah.
as opposed to just protecting it within that account or putting it into S3 or something along those lines.
Yeah. That's and that's what people need to remember is at the end of the day, we're talking, we're calling cloud, and yes, they're huge and hyperscale and all this stuff. It's still just a network and storage and compute, and you break it all down at the end of the day. It's no different than what you built yourself. So it has the same inherent flaws. And guess who codes and programs and sets up all that stuff? Humans
Yeah.
who are, you know, leading the league in human errors.
Yeah.
So they're always, there's always going to be a risk for mistakes, be it network, be it a storage mistake, compute failure, power failure.
Yeah.
It's still all out there. It's just at a different scale. But clearly, we if we haven't learned yet, we should know now that it is definitely possible, and you need to be prepared for it.
Yeah, it definitely is. And one of the things that I see the most is assumptions, right? It's like people just assume that the cloud works the same as it does on prem, or they just assume that this is just like networking, right? This is just like a database on prem or something along those lines. But there are things that you need to look out for, and one of the things that I highly recommend is AWS has this, Azure has this, Google has something similar. Is AWS, for example, has this thing called well architected. There's this framework, and us as a product or as a company, we have to go through this well architected review where they check and ask us questions about our software, how we've developed it, what APIs we're using, things like that, to make sure that it's using their best practices. But they have this well architected framework that customers can use and go through, and it has like these five, I believe now it has 6 pillars, and it's like security, cost, performance, things like that, where each one of those pillars has recommendations and best practices, and just kind of goes through, like what does EFS pertell? Like most people think, oh, EFS, that's just NFS storage, right? But there's caveats to the networking. There's caveats to like how EFS actually works and things like that. So it's like, I highly recommend, partners, customers, end users, whoever, to go out and look at these things and kind of, educate yourself on some of the nuances of what the cloud does, so that when you are architecting a solution, you know, for even if you don't use Veeam, right? Even if you don't use Veeam to protect your data, when you are architecting it, at least you're doing some redundancy, you're doing the best practices and things like that, so that when it comes time to protect your data, you're good to go. You don't have to do any major lifts, major shifts to your architecture.
It's a good point. It's a very good point. Build it right the first time, right?
Yeah.
Any parting thoughts? Anything you want to share with the partner community out here as we come towards the end?
Yeah, I would say don't sleep on cloud, right? It's we have not only from Veeam, but I mean there's a lot of interesting things. There's a lot of features coming in V12. There's a lot of features coming in our cloud native products. We have uh, we announced a Salesforce product, right? So I mean we're adding more and more cloud products, but also more and more enterprise application features and plugins and things like that all intertwine to cloud. Being able to send your data to object, being able to send NAS back up to objects and things like that. So pay attention to not only this podcast, but watch for our marketing announcements and VMon and things like that. So it's going to be a pretty exciting year.
Yeah, I figure our sales kickoff is coming up soon, and we usually have some announcements then too. I've been
Yeah.
telling the community out on LinkedIn and Twitter to pay attention that we have a lot of big releases coming out in the first half of the year, and with our sales kickoff coming, I'm sure there will be announcements.
Yeah, and we just announced a new CEO, right? So that's a
Yeah,
big thing there as well. But the key part there is you've been here 3 years, I've been here 7 years, and just the growth that we've seen in that period of time, and the whole focus of this new CEO is to grow it 10x, right? So
yeah,
it's going to be exciting, right? We're not only product wise, but partnership wise. We value the channel, we value our partners. So to grow at this 10x rate, we need our partners, right? So
absolutely.
it's going to be exciting.
Thank you for evangelizing. I shouted from the rooftops all day long. We are
Yeah,
channel focused, channel led, and we don't succeed without your success.
yeah.
Well, I thank you for joining me today. This was fantastic. I appreciate you taking the time out to do this, and looking forward to those next new big announcements from you and the cloud team.
I'm as well. Look forward to it.
Hey, thanks very much.
All right. Thank you.
This has been Veeam Partner Perspectives with Eric Doherty. Thank you for listening.